it's either hit record or do the streaming to YouTube, either or. If the streaming doesn't work, now.
There we go.
Right. We are streaming, we have a quorum, and we're good to go. So if, since Craig's remote, the responsibility would fall to the vice chair to run the meeting. Not here, then it goes down to the secretary, which is Mr. Connors.
Yeah, so she was fine.
All right, I've never done this.
Picked up the fumble.
Roll call first one. Yep, you, a roll call? Okay. I can call the roll call. So we have Bill Connors from Albany County, Kristen Swinton from Albany County, Laura Bauer from Rensselaer County, Michael Stammel from Rensselaer County, Susan, I'm sorry, I'm Italian, I should not screw this up. Costanzo. Participating in person, Craig Warner participating remotely, Gary Hughes from Schenectady County participating remotely, and Samantha Miller Herrera may or may not be here due to sick kids today.
No.
And visitors we have participating remotely, we have, I'm sorry, Nicole MacArthur from Berkshire Farm, give us a wave. Maura Manning from Albany County. Stephanie Thomas. Stephanie, what's your affiliation, please?
A policy analyst with the county exec's office.
Okay. Kat Crummy from Harris Beach, representing or filling in for Bob Ryan, and Patrick Maxwell from Saratoga County. So we do have a quorum, and we got a full house today. Yep.
So, thank you, Mark. My name is William Connors from Albany. I am, the secretary, but, just filling in today. We have two absents, president, vice president. So on the agenda, number 2, approval October 18th, 2023 minutes.
Call for a motion.
Make that motion?
Laura, second.
Second.
Yep.
So all in favor?
Aye.
Passed.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sorry, Tim, I did not introduce you when I went around. So this is Tim Backus. He's the Assistant Superintendent for the South Colony School District. He's here to talk about the education program transition today.
Thank you, Mark.
Yep.
On the agenda, number 3, financial statements through November 30th, 2023, memo 2314 in the packets.
So we're tracking on the security detention side, 80% the budget, and the total estimated expenses through November are just under $3.7 million. On the specialized secure, we're tracking 81% to budget, and the estimated expenses through November are $5.7 million. We do have 3.2 million in outstanding accounts receivable. So we need to start making some dunning phone calls to get those payments over to Berkshire Farm. Any questions on the financials?
We need a motion.
Mhm.
Need a motion to accept the financials.
I'll make the motion.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passed. On the agenda, the education program at the facility.
Sure. So first, I'd like to thank South Colony and Tim Backus personally for 27 years of service to the youth who have gone through the detention facility. It's been a tremendous track record of success, and you and your teachers and your staff have demonstrated an incredible amount of commitment, particularly the last few years as we've gone through the challenges of COVID and the staffing crisis.
And I would be remiss if on the behalf, me personally, thank Luke, yourself, all of Berkshire, for the partnership, to start where we were, to get as far as we have. I don't know, I want to say joke, but we say that during COVID, we were one of the few places that had in-person instruction because my teachers were remoting in and secure staff was in the room working with the kids. And we prided ourselves on that, prided ourselves on the diplomas that we've handed out. Students that both in the facility and students that left the facility that we tracked down and were able to get diplomas through. So we thank everybody for their partnership and the good work they're supposed to be able to do.
But the long and the short of it is South Colony can no longer provide the educational services after the school year this year. So we are actively pursuing other alternatives. But do you want to just provide some context about the
Yeah, I think it's
transition?
important for the board to understand really what drives it is the 39-bed facility kind of exceeds what one school district can kind of address. The other one would be the raise the age. You have students that are postgraduates, you have students that a high school diploma really doesn't fit into their future. And we are not equipped for postgraduate or that type of work. So it's difficult for us to respond to that. Those are probably the big, picture items. The more specific ones is as I will retire at the end of the school year after 3.5 decades with the district. Getting a lot of congratulations. I can't quite figure it out. I'm quitting a job and everyone's telling me congratulations. But with me moving on, the district is reevaluating what the administrative positions will look like. And this facility will need a dedicated educational administrator associated with that program. I would go as far as to say a passion for it. I have an interest in it. I've enjoyed it. We can't say that the next. And also we have some retirements on the teacher end and some people have asked after 25, 27 years to move on. Staffing it would be difficult for us at this point, and particularly at the needs that you're going to see in such a size facility going forward. So that's really what it boils down to.
Any questions for Tim or for me?
Well, I just want to say one of the highlights, I think, that we've heard out of Berkshire is when a youth gets their diploma. And that's really, I think the kids really appreciate being part of a school district when they're here, kind of normalizes things a little bit, so it's gonna be sad really that.
You still have not only, and we would have to clarify this, and we could probably work on this. You now have regulations that say that your district of residence has to supply diplomas as you go forward. So, you're kind of a tricky facility because the actual address is North Colony, the actual building actually might be in South Colony. But we would work on setting something up for diplomas and awarding and things along those lines. We could certainly do that. It would have the same flair that it has when I make sure everybody understands that these diplomas are just like everyone else's diploma. I always think that's important, and the families always like that. So families are always very quick to point out to us how much they appreciate that fact. So we will continue to make sure that there are arrangements for
Okay, that's good to hear.
No, we appreciate it. And, through the 27 years, these are the most challenging youth to educate. So, thank you to the teachers and thank you to you once again. So I have done my due diligence. The good folks at Harris Beach have done their due diligence. There's no way we can force Mr. Backus or South Colony to teach the children in the school.
I don't know if that's the relationship you want.
Yeah.
But I also understood they have due diligence, and I also understand if we had whatever responsibilities we have. So I do appreciate that. We've been very open in our conversation.
And you remember how we used to do things back before Raise the Age. We kind of did our own thing and we're, a square peg in a round hole, as was the South Colony School District setup. So administratively, were some things that, are not really, or were not the best practice way of going about things. So moving forward, the cost of the educational experience for the youth, rather than being on a district or the provider, because Tim's shop used to charge back to the home districts, it's an expense that we're going to have to absorb on our detention budget. And whether that means hiring teachers, which the budget I will present later includes lines for teachers, or whether that means engaging a partner such as BOCES, which we've been having some productive conversations with. Those costs are going to be falling on the detention budget.
I don't know where you want me to cover how we go about what we've done in the past. I guess if you're moving on, it doesn't really.
Yeah, nobody's going to entertain that scenario anymore.
Understood. Yeah.
I'm new to it, but I don't know, but I understand the need for the diploma. Obviously, it's a great asset of the program, but are there recommendations you have to what steps we should
continue going, I think he's probably already had those recommendations, discussions with you.
Yeah, I mean, Tim has been very open about helping us with the transition in any way he can.
I think that what Mark has led with and what they've worked on, I've had a quick conversation with Luke about, budgeting and that type of thing to be able to cover some things there and what they thought. In my conversations earlier with both OPFS and State Ed, they were talking about, Tim, if you could think of what they call it, back of the envelope kind of totals from that standpoint. I think if Mark, in using his connections, has productive conversations with BOCES, I do not mean to speak for anyone, and I know this is a public meeting, but I've been at this a while, I think I'll be fine. An entity like that has the capacity and the different arms that are needed in this, and also the billing back to the districts that are in your counties have worked with us very, very well on that. They really have. And some districts, bend over backwards to make sure everything's taken care of. And when their kids come to us, we don't disenroll them from their districts because they know they're coming back and they do that. Every now and then you run into a district that, I forget the term for it, but they're not part of the 4 counties. Yeah, so, we run into a little bit of trouble when we have to explain that, but we don't really have the legal right to do it. And it's kind of run into it, but it is what it is.
It's amazing. You just send somebody a bill and more often than not, they'll pay it.
It really it's a cliche, but it boils down to relationships because there'll be somebody new in a position and somebody new in that position will say, we don't know who you are, we aren't paying that. We say, can you call so-and-so? They'll tell you who we are, they'll pay it. And they do it, they pay. And we've had to use people in this room and on these calls to be able to help us out. People have done that. So again, I never portray it. We're not walking around making money on it, but I've never felt that we were getting, to use a common term, stiffed all over the place. It wasn't that case. There are some notable ones over the years that irritated us, but certainly, nothing notable.
So what BOCES are you speaking to and what district?
Capital Region BOCES.
Capital Region
Yep.
BOCES. So where would the kids be
So the kids will still have education in the building.
in the building?
Capital Region BOCES does run programming. We'll call it special education that's not in a traditional school environment. So they have several programs that they run. They also bring a deep portfolio of vocational training and services. They have, their new academy, which is right around the corner from the detention facility. And
I see each other.
yeah, and we are obligated to provide youth that are of non-compulsory age vocational education. And that's not something that South Colony has been able to or would be able to do. So hopefully the conversations with BOCES will be productive and we can get something new set up by the end of the school year.
Mark, if I could just talk, the Albany County Probation has been in a relationship with BOCES for several years. We run an educational program at the probation department 4 nights a week. BOCES provides a teacher. We've had several individuals complete their GED, and it's a very good relationship. BOCES is very good to work with.
Thanks for that insight. Anybody online have any questions about this? Comments? No? Well, thanks again, Tim, and thank you for coming
Thanks,
here in
everybody.
person.
You've done good work. It's a good time for a transition on a lot of levels. I think the 39-bed facility will be, I am right, 39. 38. Okay, so I'm quoting now. I just want to make sure. I think it'll be a new place and I think it'll be a new start. And, as long as I'm around and even after, I'm more than willing to help out on that. And my teachers are looking forward to seeing how many credits, and we think we can get one more diploma out of it. So we're gonna see what we can do. We've got to keep moving.
That's it.
So, thank you,
Thanks
everybody. I
again, Tim.
appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thanks again, Tim.
We'll be in touch.
Thank you, everyone. So on the agenda, number 5, approved contract renewal with the Berkshire Farm memo 2315 in your packets.
So I sent around the revised packet. Since I was so impatient on Friday afternoon to get this out, I drafted my own contract extension. But we pay attorneys to actually do that. So I added on the revised Bob Ryan's actual copy of the contract extension. So that's in your packet. There are no changes to the Berkshire contract. Again, last year we included the non-disclosure agreement for non-unionized staff members. But we'll need a motion to approve the contract for another year.
Make that motion.
Second on the motion,
A second.
all in favor? Aye. Thank you.
No, Mark, please, last year's letter.
Oh, sorry. There's a lot of copying and pasting when I put together the meeting agendas. So before I move into the budget, I just wanted to share my screen here to provide some context, to remind everyone where we've been and where we're going. Should I share the screen? Okay. So back before Raise the Age, our budget was way down here. And you can see this 2024 proposed budget is way up here. So a lot of that is directly related to the implementation of Raise the Age, expanding staff to have appropriate coverages, adding a lot of support staff, mental health, social workers, nurses, doctors, the relationship with St. Peter's Health Partners. The orange line represents the amount, the operations budget for the specialized secure detention facility. And as a reminder, that facility is 100% reimbursable, the expenses for the youth in that facility. So while we've seen a big increase in the overall budget, much more than half is 100% reimbursable. But when we put a finer point on that analysis, I have too many windows open, apologize. When we put a finer point on that analysis, we see a little bit different story in terms of our budget increase. So the gray line represents the operations expense for the SSD youth. The orange bar represents the percentage of youth in the SD facility that are Raise the Age kids. So they are also 100% reimbursable. So really, if you're looking at the blue line, the expense to run the SSD compared to pre-Raise the Age, the increase there is really nominal. And we can, attribute that to staffing costs. Remember, we increased the budget for frontline staffers to make it more attractive to work there. And of course, just overall inflation over the past 8 years will lead you to a number that is relatively higher. So you can see the lion's share of these dramatic increases from back in 2016 is 100% reimbursable. So I wanted to preface this budget conversation with that information. Because when I started here, the budget was less than $4 million, and we'll be contemplating an $18 million budget for 2024. So any questions on that analysis before I kick it over to Luke and Nikki to talk about the 2024 budget? Hearing none, I'll kick it over to Luke
Yep.
and Nikki.
I'm going to let Nikki, the Chief Financial Officer and Chief Administrative Officer for Berkshire Farms, speak to this budget, as Mark already alluded to, an $18 million budget. Nikki, please.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me and thanks for having me remote. And so I want to just talk a little bit about the changes from last year that we're seeing in the budget, and then speak a little bit about why we're seeing those changes. So the biggest piece of the 24 budget, as all of you are aware, is the expansion is running right now. They're working very hard to expand the facility. And with that expansion in 25 will be the addition of youth to the facility. Our goal from an operational standpoint is by the end of fiscal or calendar year 24 to ensure that we have appropriate staffing structure and appropriate leadership structure to ensure that when those kids come into the facility in 25, that they are trained and ready to take those youth. So that is the goal. That being said, the almost 3 million budget that is presented includes full staffing all year long for all of those positions. So you'll see at Mark, I'm assuming they have the memo as well.
Mm-hmm.
The budget memo. Yep. So at the end of the memo, I do talk about the ramp up and what it will look like in actuality. It won't be 18.3 because we are adding just line staff to get us to the end of 24 to be prepped for 25. We're adding 35 line staff positions. That being said, we're not hiring them all January 1st. So the expenses won't hit immediately. So realize that in what the $18.3 million budget is versus where we believe it will wind up for the full calendar year. The two things to consider. One, we would like to ramp up to that number of staff because it is the best position to be in for calendar year 25 to ensure that we can take on these youth and run programming smoothly. That being said, we will obviously keep Mark in the loop as we roll through the months as to how we're progressing with hiring of a significant number of additional staff over the course of 12 months. But that is our goal. I think knowing it 12 months ahead of time preps us to be able to recruit and retain appropriate number of staff to try to meet that target. So the big ticket items, the biggest piece is staffing. The biggest increase, 5.5 million in staffing. I think, we'll go through the different areas in this. And if anybody has questions, Luke can speak to, from a programming perspective, what the need and the operation will look like, but I'll speak a little bit to the money. So administrators on duty, these are positions that help us to ensure that we can work with our crisis team and make sure we have adequate staffing for all of the new pods that are going to exist to be able to dispatch that crisis team. So there is an increase for 4 positions that will help us to just align that with the new number of youth. Floor staff. So these are your detention counselors working with the youth in every pod. They are increasing by 35. That is about $2.6 million. So that is the biggest single chunk by position of the money that is increasing. Again, right now we are not fully staffed for what we need today, but we're working really close to getting there. But also this accounts for, if you were to look at the figures today, we have, I don't know, from day to day it changes, but we could have up to 10 staff on leave. So the goal is to ensure we have adequate staffing per OCFS and SCOC guidelines for appropriate staffing and appropriate staffing to cover leaves, cover vacation, cover vacancy. So we're trying to build that in here. I think we have an appropriate number. This will take us up to 84 floor staff. And this will appropriately align us to make sure we have adequate coverage and are able to move programming smoothly.
I think it's also important that our staffing lines came from an SCOC matrix on discovering staffing. So we just didn't pull that number out. That is based on an SCOC matrix to develop your staffing levels, and Nikki and I use that to come up with that number. So it fits with what SCOC and OCFS have proposed that we to follow.
And how much was added to the budget for the education program?
So that, yep. So educational and vocational is about $600,000 for this budget, realizing that South Colony is going to be educating them through the majority of the year. So that was making an assumption around hiring 4 teachers and taking some guesses based on the information we had about what we would have to pay them in a very short time frame. I think we found out a couple days before the budget was due to Mark. So we took our best guesses, but I think that's something that working with Mark over the coming months, we'll be able to hone in on a better number and identify what that's actually going to cost as a whole.
Great.
Go ahead.
The requested admin percentage or the indirect percentage remains at 13%.
Yes.
Nikki did include sort of actuals to budget history the past few years. And as she did mention, this is a ramp up budget, and we've kind of been doing that for the past few years. Our budgets that we've adopted are projected to be more than we'll actually spend in that given year. So they've been tracking under budget for the past 3 years, about 15 to 20%. And yep. I think we'll arrive right there in this budget year too.
I think so too. I think somewhere between 15.5 to 16 million would be where we'd lie, because we'd be silly to assume that we would be able to hire that number of staff, on the onset of the year. So, and I think it's diligent of the team to be able to spread out those hires throughout the year to make sure that we're not biting off more than we can chew, so that we can still focus on the kids we do have in care while still onboarding a significant number of staff.
And you also see a large increase in our therapy and psychological lines. And that's because, as we've learned this year, the kids coming in are much more mental health illness. Their needs are much higher. And so that we have an increase there, but we know that this year is not an exception. This is going to be the rule. And so we want to prepare now for these youth who are going to be coming in. So there's a large increase in our case management and therapeutic lines.
Just as a reminder, there are still no inpatient mental health beds for juveniles
There are
in the state. I don't know who's working on that, but if you're watching this YouTube video, please get on it.
or at least no beds that will take our youth. They say they're safer with us. But we want to make sure that they're getting treatment while they're safe with us.
And I just want to note, so this, in our perspective from a staffing, that 18.3 gets us to full staffing for fiscal year 24. Things to note, just thinking forward looking, coming into 25, we obviously will have pay increases for those staff, so that does slightly go up. But assuming no changes to the way the facility is going to run or anything, that would be your staffing budget with COLA increases year over year on a move forward basis. On the OTPS side, the other than personnel expenses, there will be some changes there with the addition of youth in 25, because the more youth you have, the higher the food costs, the higher. So those, you're not seeing those increases in this current year. You're just seeing inflationary increases really, other than in our medical hours. And we've had some significant dental services over the trending the past year and a half. So we built in for that as well. But most of what you're seeing in the other than personnel outside of the indirect line, which is just an allocation of percentage, are specifically related to inflation costs, like food has gone up. And our provider has been great, but they have to, pay for the food. So they've got to pass on that cost. We will see a bigger increase in 25. So forward-looking expectations, because as you increase the number of kids, those costs that are variable to kid will increase. But you're not seeing that in this budget.
Any questions for Luke or Nikki from in the room?
What's the impact per county on this increase,
So, of the overall, cash flow, 60% of costs are usually covered by Albany County, just based on the number of youth they have in the facility. Roughly about 16 and 16 for Rensselaer and Schenectady. And then Saratoga is usually between 8 and 4%. Maybe 2% of use in the facility. So that's kind of how they fall. But again, about 70% of the cost to run detention is 100% reimbursable. So as we are contemplating these increased expenses, the overall cost out of pocket to the counties compared to our 2016 budget is really nominal.
I just wanted to make sure with the passing of the new budget in Rensselaer County that we were revised and that was taken into consideration by the county and doesn't provide a shortfall, that's all.
Yeah, I think we'll be in a good spot if they copy and pasted their costs from last year. Like Nikki said, this is a ramp up budget, so we're likely to underspend what we're proposing here. But the nature of the juvenile justice system is that you could have a very low census year, or you could have a very high census year. It does fluctuate dramatically depending on what's going on in the community. Gary, you had a question?
Yeah, it was more of a resource question than a cost question. Back to inpatient beds, mental health. I don't know if this would impact our situation, but Ellis Medicine just got a nice grant from the Cabrini Foundation, which, well, that's a long story, but it's a charitable foundation funded with funds from the old Fidelis Healthcare. They're to do more of work with teenage mental health. So whether it's worth an outreach from someone to Ellis to see if that included some inpatient female beds, I don't know, but it might be.
One of the big issues with Ellis is that their youth inpatient is not locked, and so we can't put our youth into that. Their adult unit is locked, and so they an adult inmate could go in there, but our youth that have to be under supervision either have to, if they're in that unit, would have to have two of our staff with them at all times, which for many reasons, it makes it impossible to carry out.
And there
Okay,
were several situations over the last quarter where we had to get very creative for a particular youth in the facility who was suffering from mental health crises. Luke's staff, 2 staff, 24/7, in terms of maintaining staff ratio to run the facility makes it very challenging. We were able to get the Albany County Sheriff's Office to
To help us
assist
out.
with that monitoring, but it's really not their role to do that. So it's really puts a strain on the facility to not be able to have an inpatient secured mental health facility in the state.
glad I asked the question. Now I
Yeah.
understand it better. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. Anybody else? Hearing no more questions, we'll call for a motion. Mhm.
Hear a motion for 2024 budget for Berkshire.
Like that.
Second motion,
Second.
all in favor? Aye. Thank
Pass
you.
unanimous. Thanks, Nikki.
Thanks, Nikki.
Thank you.
Item number 8 on your agenda. Juvenile Justice Evaluation Memo 2318.
This is part of an ongoing evaluation process. The State Commission on Corrections, they come in and evaluate your policies and procedures as you have written and compare them to what's actually happening in the facility. So they came in July and they provided a memo to Luke and his team. And then Luke and his team have a chance to respond. You want me just to
Yeah,
highlight some
sure.
of the things that?
So when they did come in July, we were the first, as they usually make it opening the first, we were the first to undergo this minimum standards evaluation. When they came in, they discovered we were running the facility well. Some of the things you'll see in here is that we need to have written down what we do, because we do it, we just don't have it written down the way they want. The second category of things you'll see in there are things that we do, but we don't do it in the way SCOC wants to see it done. And so we're going to take some of the things we do and change it and pivot it a little bit to make sure we're fitting in to meet their standards, though we do these things. The third group of things, and it's a small group, are things that we didn't do just because we haven't been as far as a secure facility, particularly around keys and items like that, how to secure them. So we work closely with SCOC. So now we have a secure key room and things. So when you look at this standards, much of these actions required items were taken care of immediately, the evaluation, because some of the things we just didn't know. And so we learned them, but we will be responding to SCOC on the other items fully. But we have taken our steps, especially the important things like facility counts and keys and overall security. Those measures were taken immediately, just to fall in line with what SCOC wanted. And there will be a second part of this minimum standards evaluation. They did half with us in July. They're looking to do the second half with us in January or February. And so we'll be going through the second part again. So you'll see this next year with the same type of report for the second half of the evaluation.
Thanks, Luke. Any questions? Nope. For your information.
Moving on the agenda, item number 9, SCOC Transition Plan Memo 2319.
Oh, we gotta do the juvenile justice.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I was ahead of myself. Backing up to item number 8, Juvenile Justice Evaluation Memo 2318.
So this was another evaluation conducted by another agency. And the good news is that it was found, the facility was found to be in compliance. You want to just go over what this is?
So this was making sure that we kept our records clean, that we had our youth counted, that we had everything filed the way it needed to be filed in the state, and all the youth records were filed correctly as far as incidents and intakes and discharges, and making sure that we knew where everybody was and where everybody was supposed to be. We had all our orders in place, so everything was fully compliant when they came in.
Great. Any questions?
Thank you. Now moving to item number 9, SCOC Transition Plan Memo 2319.
Sure. I wouldn't say early in the capital project phase, but at some point, maybe over the summer, SCOC asked Luke and team to develop a transition plan. The goal of the plan is to make sure that facilities arrive with the resources that they would need when the new facility or expanded facility is ready to be opened. So, a lot of the stuff we've already done that they were requesting. But they really wanted Luke to put it on paper, the steps that he's taken to make sure that they have enough staff to open the facility, the staff are trained, that they have enough equipment, all, et cetera, et cetera. So Luke provided the memo that's attached to SCOC, and
They are so far fine with, I think the big thing that we've learned, because we did meet with the SCOC technical assistance team on this. We have never gone through a transition like this, and so there's some things we just don't know yet. So the SCOC technical assistance team is going to work closely with us. As far as what Mark talked about, the training, the staffing, the placement, the deployment, we have that plan all together. The furniture, the working with the construction team, we have that all together. Some of the stuff we don't know is when we move from pod C to pod D, exactly how we're going to do that. And that's where the technical assistance team is going to come in to help us write our procedures for that. But as far as running the program, we have been ahead of that. And so we are prepared for that, but we are going to need technical assistance on the actual planned movement of those few days when we transition and how we do that correctly. So we'll be working closely with the technical assistance team at SCOC on that.
any questions for
Any
Luke?
time for that to be completed?
So it's going to be an ongoing through the process. Our first biggest step is going to be in the late spring of next year when we open pod D. And we're going to have to move our kids from pod C to pod D. And how we're going to set the prepare for that and do that. So we'll be working in January to get this plan from the SCOC so that we know exactly what we're going to do and our staff are fully trained. So when we come to that in April or May, we're just ready to do it. But then it'll happen again when we have to transfer to our new sections and as we go through.
And everything we have is pretty much prepared for, it's just the policies and procedures that you're working on. There's nothing new that needs to be added as far as investments or.
No, it's more on policy, how to work a new dorm with 2 activity rooms that are closed off. How are we going to do that in the best way possible? Because we've never had a dorm like that. So we're going to figure that out.
So D to C, you have to moving from D to C.
Yes,
So
C to
that's
D.
C to D. So you're developing you'll have to develop a process for that.
Yes.
Now, the other moves, just because of where they're located, is that you foresee a whole new set of plans for that, or
No.
is this gonna fit?
I think moving to pod D is going to be our biggest thing to learn
Yeah.
to make that move. Obviously the other 2 dorms, once they're renovated, C and A and B we already know C and A and B.
Yeah.
I think at the end, our biggest question is going to be at 39 beds. We're going to have 3 12 beds and then this 3-bed area, and how to utilize that 3-bed area the most successfully, not just as a dorm, but maybe as classification or working with mental health youth, having our own input. There are lots of things we can do with that. And that's what we're going to lean on SCOC to help us develop how to utilize that in the best way possible to support the facility.
And, in the context of the ongoing construction project, there are decisions, big and small, being made pretty much every week, and waiver requests and different procedure approvals that we need to be able to continue to operate the facility in the construction zone. And so where we put temporary walls, how contractors access the facility. Right now, the school program classrooms are closed because they have to work in the hallways. So the agencies needed to approve doing the education programming in the recreation and break areas on the dorms. So there's a lot of these kinds of decisions that are being made on an ongoing basis.
Wow.
Yeah.
It seemed like it might have been just as easy just to build a whole new facility.
We're
We're moving in now.
we're in too deep now, Mike.
We're in too deep now. Yeah, I hear you there.
All right.
Lot going on.
No,
Okay, thank you. On the agenda, number 10, 2024 meeting schedule, January 17th, 2024, April 17th, 2024. June 19th, 2024, October 16th, 2024, and lastly, December 18th, 2024.
Mark, I did have this one question. I mean, it doesn't matter to me, but June 19th is now Juneteenth. I don't know if that matters
Oh,
for
yeah.
anybody with
Yeah,
holiday.
probably will not.
Yeah, we're.
Yeah, most
we're off.
municipalities be closed.
Right.
So
so-
we want to entertain June 12th, which is the week prior.
Updating the meeting schedule from June 19th to June 12th, 2024, due to holiday.
Thanks, Amy. That was a good
You're
catch.
welcome.
So this is actually an action item. I did not include the asterisk on the memo. No, we need to vote on it.
Oh, okay. So on the proposed meeting dates with the June 19th to 12th schedule change, do I hear a motion?
Make the motion.
Second for the motion?
Second.
All in favor?
I,
Thank you, passed. Okay, on the agenda, number 11, facility operations agency report out from Berkshire.
So
speak clearly.
it has been a very busy past couple months, with the construction. Construction is our biggest thing. We now have more inactive space than we have active space for our kids. One of the biggest things was the past 3 weeks, we've had to shut school down, because of work in the classroom in the hallway. We have been performing education on the dorms. What South County was able to do is provide us with tablets for all of our kids, and the teachers loaded stuff in, and our kids have been doing great. They've been getting lots of work done with our staff. The teachers come in the morning, give them their work, and then our detention staff run school for the day. And then questions are sent to the teacher, they answer overnight, and they get back to the next day. It's been working really well, but it has been tough. On a positive note, you know, as we continue to move forward, our incidents have dropped in the past month. You know, we've had previously, you know, in August and September, we had some pretty severe incidents. We had a youth who was very, very difficult, and which set off multiple other youth. We learned to work with that youth. He's still very difficult, but it has calmed the overall tone of the facility much more than it was in August and September. So we are doing much better there right now. We are, as Tim said, we're working forward for a graduation, hopefully early next year. We have one youth who's very close. He's I think he's going to take some regents in January, and he's going to be able to graduate. So we're very excited for that. We continue to try to develop programs to work with our kids. You know, it's very tough in the small space, but our kids are doing the best we can. We are at full house. Although we do have one female bed available, I know that won't be available very long. Everybody fills that pretty quick, but we have been at capacity or near capacity since for a year now. So, but it's working well. I mean, we just have a lot of challenges with construction.
Thanks, Luke.
Moving on the agenda, item 12, RTA capital project update.
It's a good segue. So Luke is on site meeting with the general contract, all the contractors and the construction managers every Tuesday at 2 in the trailer, talking through all the different things that are going to happen in the subsequent week. Any issues related to safety or security. So just want to make sure that you guys know that Luke is doing a great job in coordinating all those activities, asking the right questions, and throwing his sharp elbows around with the contractors when he needs to. Just making sure through a very difficult circumstance through the construction project, we're doing the best thing that we can to make sure that we're checking all the boxes, keeping youth safe, and continuing to run a program. You can see the October and November updates. For all the additions, the foundations and the walls are up, with the exception of the Sallyport addition. Roofs are up for the visitation wing, which is the most far along. And is the roof on for Pod D yet?
They're doing the air barrier stuff, and then they'll be doing the roof.
Okay, so it has a cover on it, and they'll be doing the roof at some point. The masons have been on site doing the finishing work on the outside of the facility to ensure we stick with the late 20th century McDonald's vibe of the facility. And as you can see in the change management document that our construction managers have provided, that we still have a pretty good buffer on our contingency budgets. We have been, as things progress, going through a number of change orders and different things that require us to dip into the contingency, but given the circumstances of the past, 5 years or so, I think we had a 20% contingency for all the contractors, so we have plenty of wiggle room there. Any questions on where we are with the capital project?
Good planning, you have that much still left in contingency.
Well, we're not at the halfway point yet, right?
No, but we are compared to any other capital projects in the state, we are on schedule.
Yep.
Nobody else is, so we are moving ahead very well.
Great. Let's see your records.
Oh, did everybody get to do this? I'm sorry.
That was my error in the initial package that I sent there.
Sorry.
So thank you. That brings us to facility usage. Mark,
I gave these charts show the facility usage for quarter 2 and quarter 3. You can see the lion's share of youth there from Albany County. And this will generally give you an idea about the number of youth using the facility per county. And
Come and go that quickly.
what's up?
There's that many this past year, you're saying, or
That was for quarter 2 and 3.
one or two, that many youth go through there?
It's not, I'm sorry, that's not the number of youth, those are actually bed days, the number of days that are being used by youth.
Okay, there you
that
go.
count. I should clarify the title of this chart. So that's equivalent to maybe 2 youth, 3 youth.
Yeah, I mean, in a quarter, if a youth stays the full quarter, it's gonna be 90 days.
Gotcha.
It makes me feel better. I read it the same way when I saw it.
Wow.
We still see, a large part of the population being the AO youth. And that's, continuing trend. They continue to be the largest and most challenging population that we serve in the facility. And the female pod has been relatively full for.
We've had that, we've had a female bed open for 4 days, which has been our longest time we've had a female bed open in 8 months.
You're gonna get a call today.
We're prepared for it. We're prepared for it.
You set yourself up.
You just did. Open that
We know
door.
it's coming. We know it's.
Very good. Excellent job. Good information.
thank you. Item 14, heightened monitoring progress report from Berkshire.
Sure, and this is just to give history, anybody. Well, to know, in March of 2022, we were placed on heightened monitoring. It stemmed from our staffing levels. There were some issues with cleaning, making sure our kids were getting education, making sure we had appropriate staffing on the dorm and our kids were getting out. We were given weekly monitoring visits by OCFS. We have since gone back to our regular monthly visits that all facilities go through. We've not gotten any report that we've been removed from heightened monitoring, but we have achieved what we need to achieve. We do have, we've learned a lot of things. We have a janitorial service. We have our own in-house janitor that we hire and maintenance person, but we also have a janitorial service that comes in to assist. We know that there is potentially, that is one increase. Nikki did not mention that we may need to increase in the 2025 budget. We want to see where we're at. We did just have I'm working with the New York State concerning their COVID review, and we asked them to do a personnel review of our facility, and they did say they suspected we needed 2 janitorial staff. But right now we have a full-time janitor and an outside company that comes in and assists. But we are moving forward. Our staffing levels are much better. We don't have the staffing problems that we had then when we can't provide. Our kids to go to school. Even now when we don't have school going on, our kids are still going to school every day. We're able to provide recreation. We have our recreation specialists and on staff. So the items that were on the heightened monitoring, we are achieving there, continuing to look at them. And I don't have any word on when we will be officially removed from that, but they have decreased our visits back to normal. We are at our normal. One thing I do want to note is that we have had a liaison from OCFS that is oversees our site. He's been with us for 6 years. He is retiring next month, so we will have a new liaison who will be coming to oversee our facility from OCFS. So I'm gonna have to train somebody new.
Oh, I got to try, like, it's someone who has never been.
We don't know who it's gonna be.
Yeah.
Thank you, Luke, and, the final is, any other business at this point?
I just wanted to give the board a heads up that we had a meeting with OCFS and Berkshire Farm to talk about Berkshire's challenges with getting paid in a timely fashion. So this challenge is particularly acute when we do the year-end closeout. So their calendar year, fiscal year is the same as the calendar year as is ours. So we typically get their closed out financials in the middle of February. And then we need to submit those costs for evaluation to the state. Once we get the final rate, we're able to bill to the counties. But the long and the short of it is for that final quarter of the calendar year, payments from the counties and to Berkshire typically don't happen until maybe late April, mid-May timeframe. So with a facility that is spending $18 million a year, 5 months without any money coming in is a real strain. And Berkshire's board is appropriately asking them, why is this happening? Because we don't want to take out, loans, which they're doing now, and paying 20% interest on it, or however much it's every time they tap into one of these loans, it's those interest costs are not reimbursable, so they're on the hook for them. So we talked to OCFS about processes by which we could increase the frequency of payments to Berkshire. So at this point, everything is on the table. We had asked if it was possible for us to charge an estimated annual rate similar to what we did before Raise the Age, so that we could get money to Berkshire and then reconcile with our user counties at year end, rather than having to wait for rates to get set every quarter and wait for counties to pay us. Under an estimated rate, that would mean we would be able to bill counties hypothetically on a monthly basis, so that money would be coming in much more frequently. But again, we have to see what they say about that proposed scenario.
It worked before. It did. It worked well.
For us, not for them.
So where do you see the long delay primarily?
Well, the long delay at year end is that there's a lot of due diligence that happens with your overall expenses for the year.
Right.
So Berkshire Farm has to do their due diligence to make sure they're comfortable with closing the books, that everything ties out. We have to do our due diligence to make sure everything lines up. And then OCFS has to do their due diligence, and they do a rather in-depth year over year comparison, and then flag any budget lines that are out of whack. And then they ask you, why is it out of whack? So then you have to justify it. Then if we send bills to the counties, some counties are in the process of, closing their books, and they're not in a position to cut checks in February or something for whatever it is. So typically what happens is we get Q4 payments from the counties and Q1 payments for the next year at the same time. So, Berkshire will go 5 months without getting paid, and then we'll pay them for half a year.
Why did you go from the monthly to now the annual? Because it was required? No, we're here now.
Yep.
We did mention early on that cash flow might become an issue. And here we are. All right. Any
You're all
questions
very-
from online? Hearing none, just a motion to adjourn.
With no additional, business, thank you, Mark. I hear a motion to adjourn. Second motion,
Thank you.
Kristen?
all in favor? Aye. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
Everybody, yes.
Two more nights in,
Yes.